The phone tumbles through thin air, frame by frame. You see it spinning against gray rock and endless sky. Then the screen goes black, and the last sound is a dull crack as it hits stone. Before that final moment of silence, there are 17 seconds of footage. A young man running, gasping for breath on a narrow mountain trail carved into the side of a cliff. His footfalls are frantic. His breathing is ragged and uneven, broken by something that sounds like a sob or a shout. The camera jerks wildly with each stride. Behind him, nothing but mist and the towering peaks of the Annapurna Range. Then he stumbles, or throws the phone, and it falls, capturing its own death as it clatters down the ravine and goes silent. That 17-second video was found 3 days after 28-year-old Ethan Calloway, a travel blogger from Atlanta, Georgia, was reported missing on the Annapurna Circuit, one of Nepal's most famous and treacherous trekking routes. For 2 weeks, Ethan had been documenting his journey in real time. Sunrise over Manang village, prayer flags snapping in the wind at 11,000 feet, steaming cups of butter tea in remote tea houses. His Instagram followers, over 40,000 of them, watched him climb higher and higher into the Himalayas, smiling against impossible backdrops of snow and stone. Then, on October 9, 2019, the posts stopped. What happened on that mountain trail? Why was Ethan running? And why, when search teams finally recovered his phone from a jagged ravine near the village of Thorong Phedi, was there no sign of him anywhere nearby? The case of Ethan Calloway remains one of the most haunting mysteries to emerge from Nepal's trekking community in recent years. It's a story that blurs the line between accident and something darker. A digital ghost story written in GPS coordinates, deleted files, and one final desperate sprint into the unknown. 6 years later, his family is still searching for answers, and that 17-second video is still the only clue. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what's the strangest place you've ever explored? I would also be delighted if you subscribe to my channel. Ethan James Calloway grew up in the leafy suburb of Decatur, just outside Atlanta, Georgia, where the summers are humid and the neighborhoods are filled with craftsman bungalows and front porch swings. He was the middle child in a family of 3, sandwiched between an older sister who became a nurse and a younger brother studying engineering at Georgia Tech. His parents, both educators, raised him with a deep respect for learning and an even deeper love for the outdoors. By the time he turned 12, Ethan had already hiked sections of the Appalachian Trail with his father, and by 16, he was planning his own weekend camping trips to the North Georgia mountains. After graduating from the University of Georgia in 2013 with a degree in digital media, Ethan moved back to Atlanta and took a job as a freelance graphic designer. But the 9-to-5 grind never suited him. In 2016, at 25, he quit his stable income and launched a travel blog called Nomad Lines, documenting budget backpacking trips across Central America, Southeast Asia, and eventually the Himalayas. His Instagram account, @NomadLines, grew steadily, not through viral stunts or manufactured drama, but through honest storytelling, vivid sunrise shots, candid reflections on loneliness and self-discovery, and practical advice for solo travelers on a shoestring budget. By 2019, he had over 40,000 followers who trusted his recommendations and waited eagerly for his next post. Those who knew Ethan described him as cautious, methodical, and deeply respectful of the places he visited. He researched meticulously before every trip, reading guidebooks, joining online forums, reaching out to locals. He carried a first aid kit, backup batteries, and a satellite communicator. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't chasing adrenaline. He was simply a young man who believed that the best education came from the road, and he wanted to share that belief with anyone willing to listen. His best friend from college, Kyle Martinez, remembers Ethan as someone who could talk to anyone, from the owner of a tea house in Kathmandu to a farmer in rural Guatemala. He had this way of making people feel seen, Kyle said in a 2020 interview. He wasn't just passing through, he actually cared about the stories behind the places. Ethan's mother, Linda Calloway, described him as her quiet dreamer. someone who processed the world through a camera lens and found meaning in small moments. The way light filtered through prayer flags, the sound of a river cutting through rock, the taste of salt butter tea at 12,000 feet. In the months leading up to his Nepal trip, Ethan had been more excited than usual. The Annapurna circuit had been on his list for years. A 2-week trek through some of the most dramatic mountain terrain on Earth, crossing the Thorong La Pass at 17,769 feet. He trained by hiking Stone Mountain every weekend with a weighted pack. He upgraded his gear, a new down jacket, merino wool base layers, a lightweight sleeping bag rated for sub-zero temperatures. He told his family this would be his most ambitious journey yet. And in a final phone call to his mother on September 28, 2019, just 3 days before flying to Kathmandu, he said something she would replay in her mind 1,000 times afterward. "I feel like this trip is going to change everything, Mom." Ethan landed at Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu on October 1, 2019, carrying a 65-liter backpack, a Canon EOS 80D camera, and a handwritten checklist his mother had made him promise to follow. October is peak trekking season in Nepal. The monsoon rains have cleared, the skies are sharp blue, and daytime temperatures in the lower valleys hover around a comfortable 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. For 2 days, Ethan stayed in the bustling Tamil district of Kathmandu, finalizing permits, buying last-minute supplies, and posting photos of narrow alleyways crowded with prayer wheels and incense smoke. His Instagram caption read, "2 days until I start the circuit, feeling ready, feeling grateful." On October 3rd, he caught a local bus from Kathmandu to Basisahar, a sprawling town at 760 meters elevation that serves as the traditional starting point for the Annapurna circuit. The route he planned was classic, a counterclockwise loop beginning in the subtropical lowlands and gradually ascending through terraced rice fields, rhododendron forests, and alpine desert before crossing the Thorong La Pass at 17,769 feet, the highest point on the trek, and descending into the sacred town of Muktanath on the western side of the range. The entire circuit typically takes 12 to 16 days, depending on pace and acclimatization stops. Ethan had budgeted for 14. His gear was methodical and lightweight. He carried a sleeping bag rated to 10 degrees Celsius, a down jacket, waterproof shell, trekking poles, a portable solar charger, and a Garmin InReach mini satellite communicator, a palm-sized device that allowed him to send preset text messages to his family even when cell service disappeared. In his pack, he also had a first aid kit, water purification tablets, energy bars, and 3 notebooks filled with handwritten route notes copied from online forums and guidebooks. He'd studied the trail obsessively. Which villages had the best tea houses, where to stop for acclimatization days, what time to wake up for the Thorong La crossing to avoid afternoon winds. Ethan's itinerary, pieced together from his last emails and Instagram posts, looked like this. Day 1, Octa 3. Basisahar to Bulpule, 840 meters. An easy 4-hour warm-up through green valleys and suspension bridges. Day 2 to 3, Bulbule to Jagat to Darapani, climbing steadily into pine forests and the first real mountain views. Day 4 to 5, Cham, 2,670 meters, where the landscape shifts from jungle to alpine and the peaks of Annapurna 2 and Manaslu appear. Day 6 to 7, Pisang, 3,200 meters, to Manang, 3,519 meters, a critical acclimatization stop where trekkers spend an extra day adjusting to thinner air. Ethan posted a photo here on October 8th, a wide shot of the turquoise glacial lake above Manang, captioned, "The altitude is real, took it slow today, tomorrow we push higher." Day 8 to 9, Manang to Yak Karka, 4,018 meters, to Thorong Fedi, 4,540 meters. The final staging villages before the pass, where tea houses are sparse and the air is thin enough to make every breath deliberate. Day 10, the Thorong La Pass, 5,416 meters. A brutal 6 to 8 hour climb starting before dawn, crossing a windswept saddle between two mountain walls, then descending to Mukti Nath. He never made it to day 10. On October 9th, Ethan checked into a tea house in Thorong Phedi, a small cluster of stone lodges perched at the base of the final ascent. The owner, a Nepali woman named Dawa Sherpa, later told investigators that Ethan seemed in good spirits that evening. He ate dal bhat for dinner, charged his phone and camera batteries, and chatted with two German trekkers about the weather forecast for the pass. At 8:47 p.m. local time, he sent a satellite message to his mother via the Garmin device. At base of the pass, crossing tomorrow at 5 a.m. Weather looks perfect. Love you. That message was delivered successfully. It was the last communication anyone received from Ethan Callaway. The alarm wasn't immediate. On the Annapurna circuit, it's not unusual for trekkers to fall behind schedule, to take an extra rest day, or to lose phone signal for 48 hours in the high passes. But by the afternoon of October 11th, 2 full days after Ethan was supposed to cross Thorong La and arrive in Mukti Nath, his mother, Linda Callaway, started to feel a cold knot of dread forming in her stomach. The Garmin satellite device had gone silent. No Instagram posts had appeared. And when she tried calling the tea house in Thorong Phedi where Ethan had stayed on the 9th, the owner, Dawa Sherpa, told her something that made her blood run cold. Ethan had left early on the morning of October 10th around 5:15 a.m., heading up the trail toward the pass, but he never arrived at the summit checkpoint. Thorong Phedi sits at GPS coordinates 28.77174 DGN, 83.972916 DEGE, at an elevation of 40 meters, nestled in a narrow valley at the base of the final ascent to Thorong La Pass. Above it, the trail climbs steeply through rocky switchbacks for roughly 6 kilometers and 876 vertical meters to reach the pass at 5,416 meters. On a clear day, it takes 4 to 5 hours. October 10th, 2019 was a clear day. Weather conditions were near perfect. Calm winds, visibility stretching across the Annapurna and Dhaulagiri ranges, temperatures hovering just below freezing at dawn. Dozens of other trekkers crossed the pass that morning without incident, but Ethan never reached the top. At first, Linda tried to rationalize it. Maybe he turned back due to altitude sickness and was resting in a lower village. Maybe his Garmin device had malfunctioned. Maybe he'd met other trekkers and decided to take a detour. But by October 12th, when there was still no word, she contacted the U.S. Embassy in Kathmandu and formally reported her son missing. The embassy, in turn, contacted the Nepal Tourist Police, the Annapurna Conservation Area Project, ACAP, and the Trekking Agencies Association of Nepal, TAN. What followed was a bureaucratic maze of phone calls, outdated logbooks at remote checkpoints, and a grim realization. In Nepal, there is no centralized system for tracking or locating missing trekkers. The process is ad hoc, reliant on word of mouth, scratched names in tea house ledgers, and the goodwill of local guides and lodge owners. On October 13th, a search team was assembled. 2 Nepali police officers, 3 local guides, and a hired helicopter. They started at Thorong Phedi and worked their way up the trail, asking every tea house owner, every passing trekker, every guide if they'd seen a 28-year-old American man with a blue backpack and a camera around his neck. One witness, a German hiker, remembered seeing someone matching Ethan's description near Yakarka, a village about 7 kilometers below Thorong Phedi, on the afternoon of October 9th. But after that, the trail went cold. Then, on October 15th, came the discovery that would change everything. A local porter, descending a steep ravine about 3 kilometers east of Thorong Phedi, off the main trail in an area rarely visited by trekkers, spotted something metallic wedged between 2 boulders. It was Ethan's phone. The screen was shattered, the casing dented, but when the porter brought it to the police and they charged it with a portable battery, the device powered on. And there, in the camera roll, was the video, 17 seconds of Ethan Callaway running, gasping, stumbling forward on a narrow trail with sheer drop-offs on either side before the phone tumbled out of his hand or was thrown and crashed against the rocks below. No one could explain what he was running from, or why he was so far off the main trail, or where his body was. Within hours of finding Ethan's shattered phone, the search operation escalated from routine inquiry to full-scale emergency response. The Nepal Army deployed a Mi-17 helicopter equipped with thermal imaging cameras to sweep the ravines and ridgelines east of Thorong Phedi. SAR Dogs Nepal, a volunteer organization that trains German Shepherds and Malinois for wilderness rescue missions, sent 2 certified search dogs and 4 handlers to comb the area where the phone was recovered. Drones equipped with high-resolution cameras circled overhead, capturing aerial footage of terrain so steep and unstable that even experienced guides refused to traverse it on foot. The location where the phone was found, approximately 28.755 degrees, 83.985 degrees, was deeply troubling to investigators. It lay nearly 3 kilometers off the main Annapurna Circuit Trail, down a treacherous scree slope that ended in a narrow gorge choked with boulders and ice melt. There was no logical reason for Ethan to have been there. The standard route from Thorong Phedi to Thorong La follows a clearly marked switchback trail heading northwest. The ravine where his phone was discovered lay to the east in the opposite direction. To reach that spot, Ethan would have had to deliberately leave the trail, scramble down loose rock in near-freezing darkness, and navigate terrain with no cairns, no footpaths, no signs of human passage. The search dogs picked up a scent trail near the ravine, but lost it within 200 meters, frustrated by high winds and the fact that 6 days had passed since Ethan's disappearance. Helicopter sweeps covering a 15-kilometer radius around Thorong Phedi revealed nothing. No backpack, no clothing, no body. Ground teams rappelled into the gorge where the phone was found, searching among the rocks for any sign of Ethan. Blood, torn fabric, boot prints, but came up empty. It was as if he had simply vanished into the mountain itself. Back in Atlanta, Linda and Robert Callaway were frantic. They flew to Kathmandu on October 16th and immediately hired a private investigator, a former British Army officer named David Travers, who specialized in missing persons cases in South Asia. Travers spent 2 weeks retracing Ethan's route, interviewing every tea house owner, every guide, every porter who might have crossed paths with him. He reviewed the phone's metadata. The 17-second video had been recorded at 6:47 a.m. on October 10th, roughly 90 minutes after Ethan left Thorong Phedi. The GPS coordinates embedded in the video file matched the location where the phone was recovered. But Travers also discovered something chilling. 3 photos had been deleted from the phone's camera roll between 6:30 a.m. and 6:45 a.m. that same morning. The files were gone, wiped clean, unrecoverable even with forensic software. Who deleted those photos, and why? The Callaway family launched a social media campaign, posting Ethan's picture across Facebook, Instagram, and trekking forums, offering a $10,000 reward for any information leading to his recovery. Dozens of tips flooded in, most of them dead ends, alleged sightings in Pokhara, in Kathmandu, even in India. One anonymous message claimed Ethan had been seen boarding a bus to the Tibetan border, but investigators found no evidence to support it. Another tip suggested he'd suffered altitude sickness and was recuperating in a remote monastery, but monks in the area denied ever seeing him. By early November, the official search was called off due to incoming winter weather and the onset of heavy snowfall above 4,000 meters. The Nepal police classified the case as likely accidental death due to fall or exposure, though Ethan's body was never found. His parents refused to accept that conclusion. "Our son was experienced," Linda Callaway told a local news station in Atlanta. "He knew how to navigate. He had a GPS device, a map, a satellite communicator. He wouldn't have just wandered off the trail. Something happened to him. Someone knows what." The 17-second video, grainy, shaking, filled with the sound of Ethan's ragged breathing, became the subject of obsessive analysis on Reddit and YouTube. Amateur sleuths zoomed in, enhanced the audio, debated every frame. Some claimed they could hear a second voice in the background, shouting in Nepali. Others insisted Ethan wasn't running away from something, but toward something. A person, an animal, a place only he could see. The truth remained maddeningly out of reach. The official Nepal police conclusion, shared by many trekking guides and mountain rescue experts, pointed to the most statistically common cause of death in the Himalayas: a fall combined with hypothermia. At 4,500 meters, where Ethan was last confirmed, temperatures at dawn drop well below freezing, and even a minor injury can become fatal if a trekker is unable to move or seek shelter. The theory suggests that Ethan may have left the main trail in darkness, perhaps disoriented, perhaps attempting a shortcut, and stumbled on loose scree, tumbling into the ravine where his phone was later found. The 17-second video, in this interpretation, shows the final moments before he fell, running in panic after realizing he was off route, desperately trying to find his way back before losing his footing and plunging into the rocks below. Falls account for a significant portion of trekking fatalities in Nepal, particularly on narrow, exposed sections of trail where a single misstep can send a person sliding hundreds of meters down steep slopes. Hypothermia develops rapidly at high altitude, especially if clothing becomes wet from sweat or snow. Search teams combed the area for weeks but found no body, which experts explained could be due to the terrain: deep crevasses, hidden caves, and snow-covered gullies where a body might remain concealed for years or be carried away by spring meltwater. But this theory left troubling questions unanswered. Why would an experienced trekker like Ethan, carrying a GPS device and headlamp, wander so far off trail in the pre-dawn darkness? Why were 3 photos deleted from his phone minutes before the final video was recorded? And most disturbingly, what was he running from? A more unsettling theory emerged from medical professionals familiar with extreme altitude conditions: high-altitude cerebral edema, HACE, or altitude-induced psychosis. At elevations above 4,000 meters, reduced oxygen levels can cause profound neurological effects: confusion, paranoia, hallucinations, and irrational decision-making. Climbers on Everest have reported hearing voices, seeing phantom figures, and experiencing vivid delusions that vanish only after descending to lower altitudes. The condition, once called mountain madness, can strike suddenly, even in otherwise healthy individuals who have been properly acclimatizing. Dr. Ramesh Adhikari, a Kathmandu-based physician specializing in altitude medicine, reviewed Ethan's case at the request of the Callaway family. He noted that Ethan had ascended from 3,000 meters Manang to 440 meters Thorong Phidi in just 2 days, faster than the recommended acclimatization schedule. While Ethan showed no overt symptoms of altitude sickness in his final posts or messages, Dr. Adhikari explained that cerebral symptoms can manifest suddenly and catastrophically, particularly during physical exertion in the early morning when oxygen saturation is lowest. A person experiencing altitude-induced psychosis may believe they are being chased, that someone is trying to harm them, or that they must reach a certain location immediately, Adhikari said. They act on these delusions with absolute conviction, often putting themselves in extreme danger. This theory would explain Ethan's frantic running, his departure from the main trail, and the deleted photos. Perhaps he believed something threatening was recorded in those images, something only he could see. It would also explain why no body was found. In a state of psychosis, he may have continued far beyond the search perimeter, succumbing to exposure in a location no one thought to look. But it didn't explain the phone itself. If Ethan was delirious and confused, why did the video show such a clear, deliberate motion? The phone falling as if thrown or dropped during a desperate sprint, rather than fumbled by someone in the grip of hallucination. For 3 years, the case went cold. The Callaway family exhausted every resource: private investigators, search dogs, reward posters plastered across Kathmandu and Pokhara, desperate appeals on Nepali television. Linda and Robert returned to Nepal twice more, hiring local guides to revisit the ravine where Ethan's phone had been found, hoping against hope that they'd missed something, that the spring thaw would reveal his body. But the mountains gave up nothing. Then, in late September 2022, 3 years and 11 months after Ethan disappeared, a Canadian drone enthusiast named Marcus Pelletier was filming aerial footage of the Annapurna circuit for a documentary project. Pelletier, an experienced videographer who'd trekked the circuit twice before, was capturing 4K panoramic shots of the Thorongla region when his DJI Mavic 3 drone picked up something unusual in the live feed. A splash of blue fabric wedged in a narrow crevasse roughly 4 kilometers north of where Ethan's phone had been discovered. The crevasse was nearly invisible from ground level, hidden by an overhang of rock and accessible only from above. Pelletier immediately contacted the Nepal tourist police and provided them with GPS coordinates: 28.789 Dugnand, 83.961 DGGE at an elevation of approximately 4,850 meters. A helicopter rescue team was dispatched the following day. What they found, rappelling into the crevasse with ropes and climbing gear, was both a confirmation and a deepening mystery. It was Ethan's backpack, the blue 65-liter pack he'd carried from Atlanta, now weathered and torn, but still recognizable by the REI logo and the name tag his mother had sewn into the top flap. Inside, investigators discovered several items: his passport, his Canon camera with a cracked lens, a soaked sleeping bag, energy bars, and his Garmin InReach mini satellite communicator, its battery long dead. But there was no body, no bones, no clothing, no sign that Ethan had ever been in that crevasse. More disturbing still, the backpack's location made no geographical sense. It was 4 kilometers north of where the phone had been found, in a direction that would have required Ethan to climb upward, away from safety, into increasingly treacherous terrain with no trails, no villages, no reason to go. The elevation was 300 meters higher than Thorong Phedi, meaning that instead of descending after dropping his phone, he had somehow continued ascending. Search and rescue experts who reviewed the discovery site said the crevasse was nearly impossible to access without technical climbing equipment, ropes, harnesses, carabiners, none of which Ethan had been carrying. When forensic teams examined the camera's memory card, they found 1,027 photos documenting Ethan's entire trek from Kathmandu to Thorong Phedi. But the 3 photos that had been deleted from his phone on the morning of October 10th were not on the camera card either. They had been taken with the phone, not the camera, and were gone forever. The final image on the camera, time-stamped October 9th at 7:32 p.m., showed Ethan's view from inside the Thorong Phedi tea house, a bowl of dal bhat, steam rising, mountains framed in the window behind. The discovery of the backpack reignited the investigation, but provided no answers. David Travers, the private investigator, reviewed the new evidence and offered a grim assessment. Either Ethan was not alone on that trail, or something compelled him to abandon all logic and climb into terrain no rational person would enter. Some speculated that the backpack had been moved, thrown or carried to the crevasse by someone else, perhaps to obscure the real location of Ethan's death. Others argued that in a state of severe altitude psychosis, Ethan might have discarded the pack himself, believing it was slowing him down, and continued climbing until he collapsed somewhere even higher in an area still unsearched. In 2024, a Nepali herder reported seeing skeletal remains near a remote shepherd's shelter at 5,200 meters, roughly 8 kilometers east of the backpack site. A small search team investigated but found only the bones of a mountain goat. Whether Ethan Callaway's body still lies somewhere in the high Annapurna range, or whether it was carried away by avalanche, scavengers, or human hands, remains unknown. The Nepal police officially classified Ethan Callaway's case as presumed deceased due to environmental accident in November 2023, citing the discovery of his backpack and the prolonged absence of any confirmed sightings. However, because no body has been recovered, the case technically remains open in their missing persons database. The U.S. Embassy in Kathmandu continues to list Ethan as a missing American citizen, though active search operations have long since ceased. For Linda and Robert Callaway, The discovery of their son's backpack in 2022 brought neither closure nor comfort. Finding his things without finding him is almost worse, Linda told a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in early 2024. Now we know he made it that far, but we still don't know what happened or why, or whether he suffered. The family has established the Ethan Callaway Memorial Fund, which provides satellite communicators and emergency equipment to young budget trekkers traveling in Nepal and other high-altitude regions. The fund has distributed over 200 devices since its founding in 2020, and Linda says it's the only way she's found to transform her grief into something meaningful. In 2023, the Callaways hired a specialist forensic team from Switzerland to conduct one final search using advanced ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging drones in the areas surrounding both the phone and backpack discovery sites. The effort lasted 2 weeks and covered nearly 40 square kilometers of mountainous terrain, but yielded no new evidence. "We've done everything we can," Robert Callaway said after the team departed. "Now we just have to accept that the mountain has kept him." Ethan's case has become a cautionary tale within the international trekking community, cited in safety briefings and online forums as an example of how quickly even experienced travelers can vanish in the Himalayas. The 17-second video continues to circulate on social media, analyzed and debated by armchair detectives who remain convinced there's a hidden clue in the footage, a reflection, a sound, a detail everyone has missed. But 6 years later, the mystery remains as impenetrable as the mountains themselves. There are places on this planet where the rules we take for granted simply stop applying. Where technology fails, where human logic falters, where the line between what happened and what couldn't have happened becomes impossibly blurred. The high Himalayas are one of those places, ancient, indifferent, vast beyond comprehension. And somewhere in those mountains, among the glaciers and the prayer flags and the endless wind, is the answer to what happened to Ethan Callaway. Was it altitude sickness? The brain's desperate oxygen starvation creating phantoms that drove him off the trail and into the rocks? Was it a fall, a moment of lost footing in the pre-dawn darkness that sent him tumbling into a crevasse no search team has yet found? Or was it something else entirely? Something that required him to delete 3 photos, to run in blind panic, to abandon his backpack and climb higher into terrain that promised only death? His family will likely never know. The 17-second video offers only questions. The sound of ragged breathing, the blur of gray rock and ski, the moment the phone tumbles and goes dark. Ethan's final Instagram caption, posted 2 days before he vanished, reads, "The altitude is real. Took it slow today. Tomorrow we push higher." He was prepared, cautious, experienced. He had a GPS device, a satellite communicator, emergency training. He had every tool modern technology could offer, and yet the mountain took him anyway. Perhaps that's the real lesson of Ethan Callaway's disappearance, that for all our planning and preparation, for all our cameras and coordinates and constant connectivity, there are still places where we are utterly, profoundly vulnerable. Places where a single wrong turn, a single moment of confusion or fear can erase us as completely as if we'd never existed at all. The mountains don't care about our stories, our families, our futures. They simply are. And sometimes, they keep their secrets. So what do you think happened on that narrow trail in the cold dawn of October 10th, 2019? What drove Ethan Callaway away from the path and into the void? Was it accident, illness, or something darker? Something that even now watches from the high passes and waits for the next traveler to stray too far from the light? The mountains aren't talking.